today the Supreme Court ruled that Trump can't be imposing tariffs the way that he has been. That authority belongs to Congress. What is this going to portend for his project to reinstitute the American system of political economy? Like, comment, and subscribe. Sign up for my free newsletter and links to the guests in the description below. Isn't that, Tom? That's what we're going to talk about.
It is.
It is.
It is.
How
are you, my friend?
I'm very well. 20th of February. I just saw in Zero Hedge. Actually, I saw in Babylon B that Trump was going to impose 1,000% tariff on the Supreme Court.
If I were him, I would.
That's right.
But what he did do is he immediately responded, and he knew it was coming. I think the markets knew it was coming. I'll be honest with you, the way everybody in Europe's been acting since the Munich Security Conference last week, they've been awfully smug over in Europe. I think everybody knew what
How would they know it's coming? Either because there were shenanigans in the background?
Because Supreme Court staffers are leaked just like everybody else does. Okay,
right.
You think that John Roberts, who we've long suspected has been a Davosian agent, and he is, because he's in the Epstein file and all of that. That look, Roberts. Let me. Roberts was a Bush appointee. He's never been a conservative. He's always failed the country at the appropriate time. I've talked about this many times. And he's an example for me of the kind of person that they put a person like him in a position to not be terrible, except when it's really important. So, for example, I always use the example of when Mitt Romney wound up as the Utah senator. Like, Romney's job when he was in the Senate was to kind of vote the Republican Party line and not really make any waves or anything else until there was a very important vote. And then he would vote against, right? There's a certain thing, like Ian Burlingame likes to talk about status for cover and all of that stuff, right? The idea of you create a persona as cover for what you really want to do. It's very much an intelligence asset kind of thing. This is part of the reason why I've been so adamant about Thomas Massie and Rand Paul and Marjorie Taylor, drama queen, and all the rest of them. I've always, when you see a particular pattern of behavior, when you see them out doing terrible things, grandstanding on principle in Massey's case, or grandstanding on the letter of the letter of the law, quote unquote, like Rand Paul, crashing out like a jilted ex-wife like Marjorie Taylor, drama queen, you realize that this is a pattern of behavior, that they were always there to crash out and to oppose any fundamental change. Okay, that's their job. Okay, and so they LARP as, in Massey's case, he LARPs as a man. In the case of same thing with Rand Paul, they both LARP as men in public when they're really just pillow biters, and and we move on with and then we're not surprised whenever they act this way. Like, they become really, really predictable about how they're going to be in opposition to X, Y, and Z, and then they'll turn around and say, "Well, I'm okay with the president doing this." Yeah, but that doesn't matter. When it actually matters, when you're going to defend the country, then he's all up in arms about it. So Rand Paul is a classic kind of, and Massey both, is kind of classic, classical libertarian, pillow-biting libertarian, bedwetters. And I mean this sincerely. Like, when I'm with both barrels with these guys at this point, you listen to them speak, and it's pretty obvious at this point that they have no other allegiance than to not their principles, but the people who are behind everything that's bad that's been happening to the United States for over a century now, because they can't be this strategically dense. They can't be this strategically stupid. No one is this strategically dense or stupid without eventually being revealed to have been in the pay of somebody else the entire time and running an operation. And so let's bring it back. Now I'm going to bring it back to the tariffs. So they were all up, they were all against the tariffs, and we know that Trump using the emergency powers, basically national security statute, to implement sweeping tariffs was a little problematic legally. From the beginning, everybody was like, I don't know if he's going to actually get away with this. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But the way the Supreme Court ruled on this, and the dissent from Barrett and Gorsuch and Roberts, all of which are they're unreadable gobbledygook. They make the argument to the letter of the it's particularly bad. And Congress Thomas just came out and said, look, he has this right to control importation of goods. He can use any tool he wants, and tariffs among them in this respect, right? Even though, in a strict read of the Constitution, of course, tariffs are a congressional power. Now, at the same time, Congress has handed the president powers to levy tariffs under a lot of different circumstances. They've abdicated they've given him power to authorize the use of military force without declaring war, even though that's technically, is that constitutional? I would argue it's not for a strict libertarian read of the Constitution, or a strict constructionist read of the Constitution. But I'm not a Supreme Court justice. So what they've done, and what Brett Kavanaugh did, was to write the lead dissent and lay out explicitly what options Trump still has, which are many, to be honest. Some of which, as Donald Trump has already pointed out in his Truth Social post that he just put out about an hour ago, actually gives him more power to levy tariffs in ways that he couldn't before. The problem with them is that they are slower to implement. This is now the difference between political time and economic time and legal time. Okay. So he can put on, so the first thing he did was just put a 10% sweeping tariff across the board because he can do so. And he just increased tariffs across the board on everybody by 10%. He even mentioned in his post, he's like, the trade representative from Vietnam just walked out of his office and said, this ruling actually gives you more power to levy tariffs than before, right? And he's like, uh-huh. So what Trump will do is now become even more obnoxious, using the power and using the powers that he still has in order to force trade deals where the other side then accepts a tariff on their goods. It's like, this is literally what he's going to do now. He'll limit imports. He'll put quotas on everything. He'll do whatever he has to do. If it sanctions this, he'll do anything he wants at this point. And then the country will go back, well, how about we just take a 25% tariff? Oh, okay, that sounds great. So he's got time. So, eventually, so as the political time, the legal time of putting these new tariffs on, as he applies for them, and it takes some of them take as many as 90 to 180 days to put on, right? So they're slower. He's going to be out there negotiating under that rubric and under that threat. So the bigger question, the only question that exists now is, whether or not he's going to give back some of the money that they've collected. Now, let's be frank and honest here. That's not going to happen. So
even through the court system, because I did read the zero hedge article.
By the time the courts actually issue this rule, and then he turns around and fights it and everything else, all of it will be right back on again. Like at the end of the day, he's going to he's going to wear them out, because he can wear them out as well. They always play the extended pretend game, and this is a part of the extended pretend game that they always play. And what I mean by extended pretend, I know I talk about it all the time, but for the new people in the audience, it's like, look, do whatever you can, throw the kitchen sink at them. Just, it's like you're running away from Michael Myers with the machete, and you just throw everything in front to slow him down, right? I hate to equate Donald Trump to Mike Myers, to Michael Myers from the Friday the 13th movies, or from Halloween, but dude, at the end of the day, that's how they want to characterize him. What this is actually, in a bigger sense, doing is they're saying, okay, fine, you're going to do that. All right. This could easily continue to ramp up the internal unrest within the United States polity.
How so?
Oh, well, you see, we now have, Congress is going to try and claw some of this power back because, of course, they don't want to do anything. They're not going to want to pass the SAVE Act. They're going to think that he's taken a hit to the head, so that he's lost political capital and he's lost some tempo and everything else. And you're going to watch now, if he does do what I think he's doing, what he already said he's going to do, what do you think they're going to do to activate various blue state governors? Like, that's always the next move, right? Is now, can we move towards, because if Congress and company try to extend the current status quo out, not allow anybody to be arrested, not allow anything to get fixed, not allow them to fix the economy or any of these things, there's two things are going to happen. One, it's funny, like the unrest within the base of him not getting anything done is going to accelerate. It doesn't matter that it's his fault or it's not his fault. It doesn't matter. He's the president, and the perception is reality, and people perceive that they think the president can do anything. So they're like, "Well, just do something." So that's going to be one. So those that have been screaming, "Oh my God, he's not doing enough," and even though he's done more in a year than most presidents get done in 2 terms, right? That's not good enough. But of course, those people were always running a grift for Steve Bannon, who is, right, and every one of them, and we all know who they are now. All of them. Right? If they were actually American patriots, we would have been having conversations these last 3 years. But they're not. I mean, sorry, I've been abundantly clear about this. Like, hey, let's get on board with the big win. Let's try and figure out. Let's try and figure this stuff out. If we're all on the same side, it's like NATO complaining about the United States taking control of Greenland. I thought we were all members of NATO together. I thought we were in a defensive alliance. Why can't the most powerful military in NATO not be in control of the defense of Greenland? This makes no sense to me. Or maybe we're actually not.
Okay.
So Robert Barnes and all the other Rich Barris and all these fucking grifters, you know exactly who you are. Okay? And you know exactly what you're doing. We could have had a conversation about any of this stuff, and you chose not to. That's a tell. As far as I'm concerned, that's like, I look at those guys, like, that's the Emmanuel Macron and the Ursula von der Leyen of the MAGA movement.
Okay. Moving on.
When you bring it all back, you realize that that's where we are, and so that's the issue here. They've done a lot of damage to the perception here, right? Like, and to the people in the audience who are like, well, dude, how about this one? This is going to hurt his ability to prosecute foreign policy, right? And to use relatively peaceful means, foreign policy, economic policy, to craft outcomes where people don't die and we can get rid of, right? So how is that good for Israel? Right? So for all the people in the audience wondering, like, who benefits from striking on the tariffs, I hate the Jews. Who benefits is City of London. Who benefits is France.
Yep.
Right? Who benefits is the EU, because that freezes global capital, thinking, oh my God, Trump's going to have to give back $100 billion, and now they can attack our bond markets, all these things that I've talked about previously, and now that helps to shore them up for a little bit. Except that markets today didn't even react to this, and it's not just because that was priced in and everybody expected the Supreme Court to strike down his use of the tariffs this way. It's that they realize they're holding their breath as to what's going to come next. You should have expected a big capital in wave into, European assets or something else. Nothing happened to them. Other than, interestingly enough, Rich, and I noted it immediately. Gold hit $5,100 an ounce. It's going to close today $5,100, and silver's going to close at $83.50. So City of London, you think you won a round? This is while the Chinese are on holiday, as you put it, right? They're on holiday. The Chinese are not in the market, and the United States is putting the screws to the gold and silver markets, which, as I've explained 100 times, are the linchpin of how, London still has a lot of control over the markets. You want to bankrupt these people. Now, this is all happening against the backdrop, and I know we're going to talk about something else, but this is against the backdrop of everything that's happening downstream of the Epstein files, all the drama that's happening politically in the UK. But for right now, let's keep it focused on the domestic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The State of the Union is on Tuesday. I fully expect Trump to breathe fire about that, about a lot of things. It's going to be coming in.
Just on that, Tom, because we don't have equivalent in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But is that widely watched by American people?
It is when Trump gives one.
Not Biden, eh?
No. But I mean, understand that traditionally, when I was growing up, the State of the Union address was practically required watching.
Right.
It would be something that we would then talk about in social settings the next morning, right? In school, but no matter what age you were, there was going to be something that was important. So no, the State of the Union address to the United States is a very big deal. And so, it's similar to what Putin does every year with this big State of the Union 3-hour or 5-hour Q&A thing that he does, right?
That's amazing. Yeah,
it is. It is
a big deal.
I love, I haven't watched one of those in a few years now because, I don't really need to, but I used to watch them religiously. I'm just sitting there going, God, yeah, this is I like that guy as my president. He can actually, string 3 sentences together and not suck.
Yeah.
But so he's going to use the State of the Union address for a variety of things. I think the administration was expecting this result. He's not happy about it, but it also tells us that at current pace, and this is the problem I think we are facing now, the judiciary and the legislature are not fit for purpose in the United States right now. And the reason they're not is because events are, of course, happening faster than they can respond. So they're being used as a means by which to slow down change, right? And it's not just, again, no one in this audience is going to be, is going to be running from here to blue sky to go talk about how we can't have change. Can't you change too quickly? That's a tyrant's thing. Please shut the fuck up. No, the point is that it's clear that we want change, but we can't get change because the bureaucracy is saying no to change. James Burnham's managerial state is saying no to it. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the administration is very quietly, while we fight all these political battles out here, very quietly underneath, administratively, there are lots of things happening underneath the surface and outside of the headlines. Whole departments are getting repurposed and moved around under different, there's a lot of things happening. For example, I'll give you a perfect example of 2 of them. The SEC and the CFTC, which used to be, the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, used to be effectively independent agencies created by the legislature outside of the executive branch. They've been moved under OMB. They're now under the Office of Management and Budget. They are now under a cabinet position. They are now these are now executive managed departments. They don't exist in their own kind of, legal,
like a quasi-legal. Quango in the UK, quasi-autonomous non-governmental organization.
Yeah,
sort of arm's-length government organization.
Right. Well, no, they were government organizations without a doubt, but they were able to operate independently under their own rules. And up until last year's Jarkissi case, they were the Jarkissi versus the SEC. They were able to bring cases and have their own tribunal courts, private courts. They could accuse and ruin the life of a person and bring them into a friggin' effectively non-court, non-judicial branch court, regulated court. It was a private Star Chamber court that this group just ran. So the SEC would impanel a hearing, and they would fight, and they had an administrative court, and then they would just destroy people's lives. Bureaucracy killed that. That was one of the most consequential things that happened right at the same time as getting rid of the Chevron deference, right?
Yep.
Loper Bright versus whoever. I don't remember the Loper Bright case. So those two things came down in June of last year, just before the Biden-Trump debate, just before Trump almost got shot, 2 years ago, before Trump got shot. And they're very, very important. So now, because they no longer run their own, I'm not sure if these things are related to each other. I just know that the Bureaucracy case changed the mechanism by which the SEC and the CFTC, for example, and any other agency can now, they have to go through the proper courts to prove their case to a judge, not to their own administrative process. And it's fundamental change, the way our government works. And so these are the kinds of things that are happening. Tulsi Gabbard, I've heard from multiple sources and people, she's reorganizing all of the intelligence services, and all of these systems, all of these bureaucracies are uniquely resistant to change, right? And so you just have to realize that this is not going to get fundamentally altered overnight. We're not going to just immediately start arresting everybody overnight. It's all dumb. If you want to arrest people for crimes, for any crimes they committed, you have to build the case. You have to do the investigation. Then you have to bring the indictment. Then you have to find a place to bring the case. And then you have to impanel a grand jury. And then you've got to do this. And then you've got to do this. And then you've got to do that. We have a legal system that's designed that way. This is the way it works. And if you want to fundamentally change the way the government operates at an international level, that's what the president can do, right? And then anything directly that exists as an executive, as the executive on any parts of the government that are purely executive departments, he has complete autonomy over those as well. The problem with this particular tariff thing, this particular use of tariffs, was that tariffs are very much defined in a particular way in the Constitution. They may effectively be a tax. That doesn't mean but they're not a tax, they're a tariff, right? They're taking, and while, there's no transitive property in this kind of legalese. Well, if this kind of taking is a tax and this kind of taking is a tariff, well, then the tariffs are taxes. They are conceptually, but they aren't legally. This was literally the reason why Gorsuch said no. Okay. This is how John Roberts was able to wheedle his way through and say regulation, in the case of Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, was that a regulation that, created a taking, created a tax, that was okay. But a regulation like the statute that Trump used the tariffs under, IEEPA or whatever the hell it's called, that regulation isn't allowed to create a tariff. So it looks like he's contradicting himself. Under the ACA, it's okay. The regulation can create a tax, but under these rules, the regulation cannot create a tax, even though because tariffs aren't taxes, they're tariffs. Even it doesn't matter that effectively they're the same thing. That's not the point. The point is these are very, very specific, and there would be wiggle room on the definition of this if tariff weren't enumerated as a legislative power in the Constitution. Okay, so if there was nothing in Article 1, I think it's Article 1, right? Article 1 is the powers of the legislature. If it wasn't an Article 1 power of Congress, then what I just outlined about Robert's inconsistency relative to the ACA and the tariffs, none of that would compute. He would be contradicting himself directly, but he's not because of that. And this is part of the problem. Now, as Trump has just said, and I do recommend everybody read an immediate blog post that Martin Armstrong put up. I should maybe give you the link to it. Marty actually emailed it to me directly right after he published it, FYI, about the legalese relative to this. And I'm not sure I agree with all of that argumentation, and I certainly don't agree that I certainly may or may not agree if Clarence Thomas, who I would consider Marty may be a very good constitutional legal mind at this point because he defended himself in court, and I'm not disputing that Marty doesn't have a lot of good things to add to the conversation, but I don't think he rises to the level of Clarence Thomas.
No,
I'm going with Clarence Thomas, and Clarence Thomas said he has the right to regulate importations, and levying tariffs is one of those. You gave him that power. It's in the acts and it's in the legislation. We have it. He's got it in these other legislations. It's ludicrous to think that he doesn't have that power, and Thomas was unequivocal about this. So, couple of little bits and pieces here. Don't be surprised if the rumors that John Roberts is going to step down from the court, now that this has been done, aren't true.
Oh.
Last thing that he would do on his way out the door would be to do this because they didn't want to leave Chief Justice Clarence Thomas in charge of the tariff rule. Looking ahead, let's talk about the Voting Rights Act. Because if the court shoots down the Voting Rights Act, they won't even need the SAVE Act to pass Congress because Trump can just say, "Sorry, voter ID, nope, no ballot harvesting on federal elections, blah, all of it." So, but stay tuned, folks. We're not done with the Supreme Court yet.
Okay, shouldn't the Voting Rights Act make voting secure and equitable for everybody?
Yes, but here's the thing. And now I'm going to say that I'm out over my skis here. I'm going to be frank and honest. Okay. I haven't studied this part of it, so I'm going to back off here. I'm just talking strategically. If the court strikes down the Voting Rights Act, which is the main mechanism by which the states have been able to,
do the shenanigans.
Voter ID, a poll tax.
Yeah.
That all goes away. And the president can just say, look, we're regulating elections like this. We're putting ICE agents at the polling stations. We're moving the National Guard in to all of the county, to many county supervisors of elections. And if we see anything hinky, you're going to jail. Like, that's what the American people want. 85% of Americans want secure elections. The 15% who don't were rioting in Minneapolis a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
people want secure elections, except for those that benefit from insecure elections. That's right. Tom, thank you so much. Great talking to you as ever. Look forward to speaking to you again. Everybody, let us know, how do you think it's going to work out for the tariffs, and in the comments, and between now and when I see you next. This is Rich and Tom signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.